A couple of weeks when I last spoke, I had here a bottle of holy water turned into wine. Now, I showed it, but I didn't share it. But it did provoke a little bit of interest. Some people then inquired about the retreat. So this morning what I'm planning to do is to share with you something of the retreat that three of us Columbans, Trevor, Ray and myself, made in the Jesuit retreat house at Seven Hill in Clare Valley. It's a beautiful setting, rolling hills, alternatively covered with vines or native bush. And the procedure we had was for 6 days of total silence, except for a daily meeting with the person who accompanied us. I had a young Jesuit from Christchurch, New Zealand, called Father Rob Morris. And each morning I would meet with him and share with him what had happened the previous 24 hours. And he would listen intently and then maybe ask a couple of questions and then suggest a few gospel texts that I might pray on, reflect on, contemplate during the next 24 hours. And the idea was to keep me on a journey of coming closer to and knowing more fully my Lord. What I did do on this retreat, though, was re-encounter 4 friends, I consider them, from the past. And the first was Jesus, not surprisingly. He came across this time as the Good Shepherd. Now, the image spoke very strongly to me because in his time and his place, the shepherd walked in front of the sheep, and the sheep knew their shepherd, they knew the sound of his voice, and they followed because he would lead them to where there was good pasture. He would lead them to where there was water. At the end of the day, he would lead them home to the corral where they'd be secure and safe from marauding wolves or thieves. And one of the things Jesus, as the Good Shepherd, did was he would invite us to come follow him. And this theme was repeated various times during the retreat when he would meet different members, different participants in the gospel story. And the first of those was Peter. And the time that was strongest was when Jesus came to Peter, who was in the boat with the other disciples in the middle of Lake Galilee, and a storm was upon them. And Jesus came walking on the water. And Peter shouted across the noise, "If it is you, tell me to come to you across the water." And Jesus said, "Come." So Peter impetuously jumps out of the boat and starts walking across the water. And it's only after he's walking across the water for a little while he realizes that the waves are fairly high and the wind is pretty rough, and he takes fright. But the point to me is that the impetuousness of Peter. He sees the Lord. The Lord says, "Come." So he just jumps out of the boat and heads towards him. Beautifully impetuous. A very colourful personality. The other one was a little bit different. It was Thomas. And when Jesus appeared to the disciples in the upper room after his resurrection, Thomas was not there. And so when Thomas returned, they shared with him what they had seen and heard, and how Jesus had come, and so on. And Thomas says, unless I put my fingers in those wounds in his hands and my hand into his side, I will not believe. Sure enough, a week later, Thomas is with the crowd and Jesus appears. And I imagine Thomas, when he sees Jesus present, sort of moves back behind the crowd, or the disciples gathered, And Jesus looks over and says, Thomas, come. And as Thomas is coming forward, he shows him the wounds in his hands. And Thomas, in total acceptance of his Lord, falls to his knees and says, my Lord and my God. And what I like about it is the total acceptance by Thomas. There's no ifs and buts. There's no, look, I must apologize. No, there's none of that. It's just total acceptance. It's beautiful. And the other fellow is a fellow called Bartimaeus. He was a blind beggar in the city of Jericho, which is down in the Jordan Valley. And Jesus is coming through the city, about to go out of the city with a large crowd around him of curious people. And Bartimaeus hears the crowd and he asks, who is it? And they say it's Jesus of Nazareth. So he shouts with all his strength, Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me. And the crowd tell him to quieten down. But he goes even louder. And Jesus hears him and he says, call him here. And so Bartimaeus, when he receives the message, throws off his beggar's cloak, jumps to his feet, and is led to where Jesus is. And then Jesus asks him, Jesus the Good Shepherd asks him, what is it you want me to do for you? Beautiful. But Bartimaeus has the question immediately, and he says, Lord, that I might see again. And Jesus says, your faith has made you well. And he recovers his sight. But then immediately follows Jesus up the hill to Jerusalem, up to the last days, the final crunch. And what I like about Bartimaeus is his decisiveness. He hears it's Jesus, so he insists on being heard. When he's called, he jumps up. And when Jesus asks him the question, he has the answer ready. And then he follows Jesus up the hill. So those characters stick in my mind very clearly. I've met them all before, obviously, in prayer and meditation and reflection. But just in new ways. Jesus, the Good Shepherd that says, come follow me. Yeah. And the impetuous Peter, who jumps out of the boat in the middle of a storm. And then Thomas, who with total acceptance says, my Lord and my God. Beautiful. And then Bartimaeus, decisive. Yep. Okay, I want to be heard. This is what I want you to do for me, and I'll follow you. Yeah. 4 great personalities, and the experience of Jesus, the Good Shepherd, who was Good Shepherd to them as well as to us on the retreat.